A headline from Elon Musk, and it is dramatic. He says America is going bankrupt extremely quickly.
America is also going bankrupt extremely quickly.
The United States is on the brink of bankruptcy. Yes, just check the numbers. America's going broke. But the good news is that people are raising alarms, and surprisingly, the latest warning shots came from Elon Musk.
America's going bankrupt, so that just can't happen.
The message is clear. Control the spending now or go bankrupt.
We spend a lot on the Defense Department, but we're spending over $1 trillion on interest. If this continues, the country will become de facto bankrupt.
The national debt has soared past $30 trillion thanks to excessive borrowing, reckless government spending, and poor financial management. So why is America going broke? And more importantly, what can be done before it's too late? Join us as we break down the harsh realities of the U.S. debt crisis.
A financial problem. There's an imbalance problem. There are basically 5 big forces through history that drive everything.
Why is America going broke? Elon Musk recently took to X, raising a pressing issue: the escalating national debt of the United States. According to Musk, if current trends continue, the nation could face bankruptcy as early as 2029. Before you call him paranoid, remember that the national debt has reached approximately $36.5 trillion as of March 6, 2025. For context, that's a whopping 123% of our national GDP.
They note that in 2025, interest costs are greater in relation to GDP than at any point.
To understand the gravity of this situation, we must give some historical context. During the Union's early years, the national debt was relatively modest. For instance, in 1791, following the American Revolutionary War, the debt stood at approximately $75 million. Over the centuries, the debt fluctuated due to wars, economic recessions, and policy decisions. However, something interesting happened during the early 1830s. Andrew Jackson was the president, and the U.S. achieved a debt-free status. But that is just half the story. The full details will change everything you thought you knew about U.S. finance. The Jackson debt-free period didn't last, and the debt rose again. Then came the 20th century. The national debts peaked during the Great Depression and the Second World War. The debts went down after the war but rose again in the 1980s. You can blame tax cuts, increased defense spending, and entitlement programs. As if that wasn't enough, the 2008 financial crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic brought the national debts to the current level. Since 2013, our debt-to-GDP ratio has surpassed 100%. If you're not familiar with economics, it means the national debt is larger than our economic output. We borrow more, produce less, and consume more. According to economics, it is understandable if it happened during wartime, but incurring such huge national debts during peacetime is simply unacceptable. Elon Musk believes current government spending is unsustainable and could lead to severe financial consequences if not addressed promptly. Remember, this is not coming from any random person. He's the world's richest man, controlling billions of dollars. If Elon Musk says our financial system is faulty, there's no doubt that trouble lies ahead. Elon Musk has been particularly uncomfortable with the rising federal deficit. Let's break it down. The deficit is the shortfall between government revenues and expenditures. For instance, if the feds plan to spend $8 trillion on defense, but only have $5 trillion, they borrow $3 trillion to make up for the deficit. You see, deficits are expected. Every country in the world has some deficit, but the problem is that the U.S. deficit has grown substantially in recent years. Every deficit adds to the national debt. That is why Elon Musk has been raising alarms about federal deficits. Musk believes that we cannot continue like that. The more deficits we incur, the closer we push the nation toward bankruptcy. But that is not all. National debts can rip the heart of a country apart. For starters, increased debt levels lead to higher interest payments. That means the government has to allocate a large portion of the federal budget to debt repayment. So how does it affect every U.S. citizen watching this video right now? Since the government will allocate considerable funds to debt repayment, there are limited funds to finance essential services such as education, healthcare, and infrastructure development. Secondly, a high debt level can reduce investor confidence in the U.S. market. Fortunately, Elon Musk is not just complaining, he has suggested solutions. For instance, he has called the Trump administration to cut federal expenditures and reduce wasteful spending. The funny thing is that debts are not magic. They don't just accumulate overnight. So the question is, who is to blame for the levels of the U.S. national debt? How did we get here? Keep watching to find out. The bitter truth about U.S. government waste. America has a lot of money, so what caused the debt? According to leading economists, the U.S. national debt crisis is not about how much the government spends. It is about how that money is spent. Year after year, billions of taxpayer dollars vanish into bloated budgets, mismanaged programs, and projects that never deliver what they promised. While politicians argue over taxes and spending cuts, the real issue is government waste on a massive scale, pushing the country toward financial collapse. Elon Musk has repeatedly warned about this inefficiency. According to him, U.S. government spending often rewards failure rather than success. He blamed bureaucratic waste, slow-moving agencies, and poorly planned projects that drain public funds without improving infrastructure or services. Musk believes that the private sector is far more effective at handling large-scale projects. And honestly, the numbers back him up. Companies like SpaceX have achieved what NASA struggled to do. Musk sent rockets into space at a fraction of the cost. Do you know why? Businesses must control costs and deliver results, while government agencies continue to receive funding regardless of performance or results. For instance, many experts believe that the Department of Defense is one of the biggest sources of financial mismanagement in the U.S. government. Could you believe the DoD failed every audit since audits became mandatory in 1990? But that is not even the most shocking part. Stay tuned for an explosive truth. In 2018, an internal review found the Pentagon couldn't account for $21 trillion. Instead of fixing the problem, defense officials patched paperwork to make budgets appear balanced. Just before then, another investigation found that the Department of Defense blew over $125 billion in wasteful spending over 5 years. However, military leaders buried the findings, fearing Congress would slash their funding. Any private company losing track of that much money would be forced into bankruptcy, but there are no consequences in Washington. Another example of large-scale mismanagement is the Department of Veterans Affairs. According to investigations, VA hospitals falsified records and delayed medical care for veterans, while executives collected millions in performance bonuses. Even after that scandal, the agency continued its reckless spending. In 2016, while thousands of veterans struggled to get essential medical treatment, the VA spent $20 million on high-end artwork, including a $670,000 sculpture for a California facility treating blind patients. That kind of spending isn't just irresponsible. It is an insult to the people the department is supposed to serve. But that is not all. Look at infrastructure projects. Musk started his boring company in response to public transit projects that were notoriously slow and expensive. Federal infrastructure spending often drags on for years, with massive cost overruns due to bureaucratic red tape and inefficiency. For instance, the California high-speed rail project was supposed to cost just $33 billion. Could you believe the costs eventually reached $128 billion? Surprisingly, there is still no clear timeline for completion. Unlike federal road projects, Musk has proven that transportation tunnels can be built faster and at a fraction of the cost when handled by private enterprises. Let's talk about another money waster: subsidies and bailouts. They told us subsidies are tools to support industries and create jobs, but don't get fooled. In many cases, subsidies do the exact opposite. According to Elon Musk, government subsidies are wasteful and prop up failing businesses instead of encouraging real competition. In 2009, the federal government poured billions into solar panel manufacturer Solyndra, only for the company to collapse 2 years later, leaving taxpayers with over $535 million loss. That money didn't create lasting jobs or innovation, it simply vanished. Sadly, the same pattern plays out in agriculture, where large farming corporations receive billions in subsidies while small farmers struggle. In 2020 alone, the U.S. government spent over $46 billion on farm subsidies, much of which went to massive agribusinesses that didn't need the help. Musk warns about this type of inefficiency. Instead of supporting competition and innovation, government spending often creates artificial markets where failure is rewarded. And don't forget federal surcharges, the extra fees we pay on phone bills, airline tickets, and other services. Allegedly, they use the funds for emergency response systems in airport security. However, these funds never reach their intended programs in states like New York, Instead, they are diverted into general budgets to cover unrelated expenses, leaving essential services underfunded while taxpayers unknowingly foot the bill for other government spending. If you think that is the worst of it all, wait to see the level of corruption in our educational system. It will leave you completely speechless. The federal government spends over $79 billion annually on education, yet test scores have barely improved in decades. Administrative costs comprise a significant portion of school funding, with districts spending millions on consultants and bureaucratic salaries rather than classroom improvements. In some cases, states have spent taxpayer money on abandoned programs. A few years ago, the Los Angeles Unified School District spent $1.3 billion on iPads for students, only to scrap the program after a year due to software issues and poor planning. That money could have been used to improve teacher salaries, update facilities, or provide better student resources. But instead, it was wasted on a failed experiment. Social safety nets have become the new fraud channels, costing taxpayers billions yearly. Money sent to the wrong people or incorrect amounts reached nearly $247 billion in 2022. This includes fraudulent unemployment claims, duplicate benefits, and payments to ineligible recipients. Instead of fixing these issues, the government often throws more money at the problem, creating a cycle where wasteful spending grows unchecked. So according to Musk, the government must focus on eliminating waste instead of constantly raising taxes. The United States collects over $4 trillion in taxes annually, yet much of that revenue is lost through inefficiency and mismanagement. The national debt crisis wouldn't be as severe if government agencies were as accountable as private businesses. However, Elon Musk believes that the newly created Department of Government Efficiency can save the country from the debt burden. How true is this? Stay with us. Let's find out. Musk's efforts through DOGE. The U.S. government is making attempts to address the debt crisis. As part of this effort, Trump signed an executive order to create the Department of Government Efficiency on January 20th, 2025. The primary duty of the new department, headed by Elon Musk, is to reduce federal spending. DOGE is a direct attempt to crack down on wasteful expenditure, bureaucratic bloat, and agencies that operate without accountability. This move isn't just about exposing inefficiencies, but fixing them. Unlike traditional government watchdogs that produce reports and recommendations with little real-world impact, DOGE is designed to pressure agencies into action, calling out waste and pushing for private sector-driven solutions. One of the first targets of DOGE is the United States Agency for International Development. USAID is an organization with a long history of wasteful spending. USAID's budget has ballooned over the years, with billions going to foreign aid projects with zero transparency or measurable results. DOGE investigations found massive fraud, including contractors charging for work that was never completed, funds disappearing into corrupt foreign governments, and expensive projects failing to deliver tangible benefits. Millions have sometimes gone to luxury hotel stays, high-end consultants, and administrative costs instead of actual aid. According to Musk, taxpayer dollars should not be funneled into programs that show no return on investment. This view aligns with other experts who believe that America must run on efficiency and innovation, not just endless spending and a growing debt profile. Just look at how Musk runs Tesla and SpaceX, two companies that have achieved what government agencies have struggled to do for decades. Tesla has made strides in sustainable energy, reducing reliance on traditional fossil fuels while mainstreaming electric vehicles. While Washington has spent years debating climate change policies and subsidizing failing green energy companies, Tesla has made EVs a viable reality without relying on government bailouts. NASA was once the world's leading space agency. However, it has become weighed down by excessive costs and delays in recent years. The Space Shuttle program cost over $200 billion, with each launch running close to $1.5 billion. When the program ended in 2011, NASA could not send astronauts into space without relying on Russian rockets. SpaceX changed that. Musk's company slashed the cost of rocket launches by developing reusable technology that reduced expenses by over 90%. Elon Musk has saved taxpayers billions and has proven that the private industry can outperform government agencies in large-scale projects. He is taking it further by bringing a culture of innovation and accountability to government agencies. Musk is also pushing AI-driven automation to improve efficiency at the national level, and the scale of his push is mind-blowing. Government agencies are notorious for relying on outdated systems, excessive paperwork, and manual processes that waste time and money. AI-driven automation can streamline operations, reduce redundant tasks, and eliminate bureaucratic inefficiencies that drain public resources. Tesla's advancements in AI and robotics, such as its work on self-driving technology and automated manufacturing, demonstrate how automation can lead to massive cost savings and increased productivity. If applied at a government level, these same principles could help cut wasteful spending and improve the overall efficiency of public programs. Instead of relying on endless taxpayer funding to prop up inefficient systems, he wants solutions driven by innovation, accountability, and market competition. His companies have already demonstrated how private sector efficiency can outperform government programs in energy, transportation, and space exploration. The question now is whether these principles can be applied on a national scale to reduce financial waste. As America's debt crisis is growing, the need for real solutions is more urgent. Some economists agree that the U.S. faces a structural problem in managing, allocating, and spending money. DOGE is challenging the status quo, exposing government inefficiencies and pushing for practical reforms. But Musk's vision goes beyond just fixing what's broken. He's looking at completely replacing the financial models of the government to change how the country operates fundamentally. The real test is whether policymakers are willing to embrace these changes or if they will continue down the same path of waste and mismanagement. That's where the real danger lies. We must examine it closely next. How much is the Trump administration ready to support Musk's plans? Stay tuned to find out. Finance policies of Trump administration. After Donald Trump returned to the presidency, he understood the debt crisis, knew America was growing broke, and embarked on aggressive policy initiatives to control federal debts and stimulate economic growth. For starters, Trump wanted to cut federal spending, crack down on wasteful spending, implement substantial tax cuts, and widespread deregulation. While supporters lauded these efforts as necessary reforms to boost the economy, reduce government bloat, and keep the U.S. finances afloat, some people warned that the policies could cause challenges and disruptions to essential public services in the long run. One of the hallmark initiatives of Trump's administration was the substantial reduction of the federal workforce. It all started with an executive order issued on January 20th, 2025. Trump reinstated the federal hiring freeze, just like he did during his previous administration. This freeze was part of a broader strategy to decrease the size of the federal government by 20% within the year. Trump administration officials claim that a leaner federal workforce would increase efficiency and save costs. We mentioned earlier that when Trump appointed Elon Musk to lead the Department of Government Efficiency, some of his top mandates were to identify and eliminate wasteful spending across federal agencies, streamline operations, and modernize governmental technology. This initiative aimed to dismantle bureaucratic inefficiencies and reduce redundant expenditures. One of the first recommendations of DOGE was to cut federal staff, and the scale of the cut will shock you. For instance, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration announced plans to lay off over 1,000 employees following an initial decrease of 1,300 staff members. But that didn't sit well with some people. Debt or no debt, scientists believe that such cuts could jeopardize critical climate research and public safety measures. Similarly, they plan to cut over 80,000 Department of Veterans Affairs positions. This plan has raised alarms about the continuity of healthcare and support services for veterans. But Trump's plan to rescue America from growing broke goes beyond staff cuts. Alongside efforts to reduce government size, the Trump administration implemented substantial tax cuts to stimulate economic growth. The tax reform package, which is known as Agenda 47, seeks to reduce individual and corporate tax rates. Trump believes that increased disposable income and business investments would spur economic activity. Well, that is not all. He also thinks tax cuts would lead to job creation, higher wages, and economic expansion. However, some economists believe that tax cuts could worsen the national deficit if government spending is not reduced. The good news is that Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency seems to be doing a great job with its cost-cutting efforts already, so we'll likely never have any trouble with more deficits if Trump goes ahead with the tax cuts. According to current projections, a permanent tax cut could increase the deficit by over $4 trillion in the coming decade. It simply means the government must find a way to cut $4 trillion from federal spending over the next 10 years if they want to cut our taxes. Another cornerstone of Trump's cost-cutting plan is to crack down on illegal immigration. According to President Trump, cracking down on illegal immigrants will not only save costs, but will also protect American jobs. Trump has demanded stricter border controls and accelerated deportations of undocumented immigrants. The rationale is that reducing the number of undocumented immigrants would decrease the strain on public resources and open up employment opportunities for American citizens. We're not saying Trump's plans are perfect, though. For instance, there is no evidence that immigrants are responsible for the high levels of U.S. debts. And in the first month of the new term, only 37,660 individuals were deported, compared to a monthly average of 57,000 under the previous administration. Trump was not happy with the shortfall, and he changed the leadership of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement to intensify the war against illegal immigrants. Some people believe that the crackdown will only worsen the growing debt. If you're wondering how so, remember that many sectors in the U.S. rely heavily on immigrant labor. We are talking about agriculture, construction, and manufacturing. If companies can no longer find cheap labor, consumer costs will increase and economic growth will slow. The Trump administration is reducing government size, cutting taxes, deregulating industries, and tightening immigration controls to stimulate economic growth and enhance efficiency. However, many do not know that these measures could likely worsen the national debt and disrupt essential public services. As head of DOGE, Elon Musk was the lead player in pushing for these reforms. His vision of a streamlined, efficient government aligned with the administration's goals. But then, there is a problem. Rapidly implementing these sweeping changes without thorough analysis and planning can trigger unintended consequences. If you think Elon Musk and Donald Trump's administration's plans to roll back the national debt are over, you're in for a great shock. We are about to reveal the biggest, wildest, craziest cost-cutting measure the administration is considering. What else could it be? Stay with us to find out. Trust administration defense spending cuts. Do you know that Trump plans to strike a deal with our near-peer adversaries? Yes, you heard that right. Trump is turning to Russia and China to help reduce U.S. national debts, and how he plans to do it is not what you think. This time, Trump suggests that the United States, China, and Russia sit down for talks about cutting military spending. Given the state of global affairs, it's an idea that seems almost impossible, but it's also one that speaks to a much deeper issue. America's defense budget has spiraled out of control. The country has been spending at levels that are simply unsustainable, and if nothing changes, it could push the U.S. closer to financial collapse. Trump feels that we need to make a deal. Military spending has been justified for years to maintain global dominance and protect national security interests worldwide. But at what cost? The numbers don't lie. The U.S. defense budget for 2023 alone was a staggering $877 billion. For context, this is more than the combined defense spending of the next 10 highest spending countries. Curiously, American military expenditure keeps growing, no matter the financial strain. When Trump was in office for the first time, he pushed heavily for military upgrades, particularly in modernizing the U.S. nuclear arsenal. Billions were poured into developing next-generation strategic nukes, hypersonic missiles, and other high-tech weaponry. Back then, Trump believed the investments were essential to maintaining global deterrence, but it came with a massive price tag. The Pentagon's nuclear modernization plans cost at least $1.5 trillion. That's money America simply doesn't have. The cost of endless wars has only made things worse. The U.S. involvement in Afghanistan, which spanned 2 decades, cost more than $2 trillion. That's not including the money that will continue to be spent on veterans care, interest on borrowed war funds, and ongoing security measures. And what did the U.S. get for that investment? The Taliban is back in power, and the country is no more stable than it was before. It's a painful reminder that America's military spending doesn't always yield the results it promises. But there is another financial strain for the U.S. defense, and the amount we spend on a war that was never our making will leave you completely speechless. We are talking about Ukraine. Since 2022, the U.S. has sent almost $70 billion in military aid to support Ukraine's war efforts against Russia. Some people believe backing Ukraine is necessary for global stability, but the question is, how long can America keep writing these massive checks? With inflation squeezing American households and the national debt soaring past $34 trillion, endlessly funding overseas conflicts is starting to look less like a strategy and more like a reckless financial decision. Trump's push to cut military spending and shift priorities isn't just about reducing aid to other nations. Trump is embracing a bitter truth. The U.S. is headed toward a financial disaster. Defense spending has been considered untouchable for almost a century, a sacred cow that no president dares to challenge. However, as costs spiral out of control, even the diehardest supporters of a strong military are starting to ask whether this level of spending is sustainable. Elon Musk has been one of the most vocal advocates for rethinking America's approach to global conflicts. He has repeatedly pushed for diplomatic solutions in Ukraine. According to Musk, prolonged war is both financially draining and unnecessary. You may think his Starlink satellites are keeping Ukraine connected, but even he has questioned how long the U.S. should keep funding a conflict with no clear end. According to Trump, America's approach to defense spending needs an overhaul. He wants the Pentagon to prioritize technological advancements without throwing billions into projects that never deliver. Trump's recent suggestion of military spending, talks with China and Russia, aligns with Musk's push for financial responsibility. The idea is simple. Instead of pouring endless money into military expansion, why not work toward reducing the need for such massive budgets? A global agreement to cut defense spending would free up resources for domestic investment, infrastructure, and economic growth. Of course, it's easier said than done. China and Russia may not trust U.S. intentions, and America's defense industry is deeply entrenched in the economy. Cutting military spending means facing pushback from defense contractors, political figures, and anyone who benefits from the status quo. But if something doesn't change, the consequences will be severe. The national debt is a ticking time bomb that threatens our way of life much more than any current conflict. Trump's plan to scale back spending isn't just limited to military budgets. His administration also takes a more rigid stance on security along our borders. Trump admitted during an interview that deploying forces to tackle immigration will save billions in government expenses. The logic is that instead of deploying our forces on expensive missions worldwide, why not deploy them to the southern borders? The benefits are twofold. It may save the Pentagon some costs in expensive overseas operations, and tighter border security also means less strain on public services, fewer tax dollars going toward undocumented immigrants, and a reduced need for emergency aid programs. Whether or not this approach will yield significant savings is up for debate, but it fits into the broader strategy of cutting costs wherever possible. The simple truth is that America is spending money it doesn't have. The defense budget has grown to the point where it is eating into funds that could be used for education, healthcare, infrastructure, and economic revitalization. Military strength is important, but financial stability is just as crucial. Imagine if we owe so much debt in peacetime. What happens to our nation during the war? If the U.S. continues on its current path, it risks becoming a nation that can fund wars but not fix its roads, a country that can build nuclear weapons but not keep its economy afloat. The push for military spending cuts isn't just about saving money. The period when global power is measured in tanks and missiles is over. The new power is economic strength, innovation, and the ability to invest in a sustainable future. If Trump's proposed talks with China and Russia gain traction, it could mark a shift toward a different kind of global leadership. We have come to an era where America places stability over endless expansion. Trump's approach may not be conventional, but so is the problem he's trying to solve. At the current rate of our national debt, something has to give. Thank you for staying with us. What do you think about our rising national debts, and do you believe Trump's plan will work? Share your opinions with us in the comment section. If you enjoyed the video, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Also, click the following video on your screen, and you will enjoy it.